Good afternoon, everybody. Big Mike back here with you once again. Welcome back to Big Mike Talks, where today I'm going to be covering the results for Impact Wrestling Final Resolution, and then I'm going to be covering SmackDown, AEW Rampage, and AEW Collision. That's right, I finally got back to watching these shows. So, sit back, relax, and let's get into this one as I cover Final Resolution. We start off with the Impact Tag Team titles on the line as the ABC, aka Ace Austin and Chris Bay, take on the very weird Franken team of Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers. Winners the ABC. Post-match, we have the Rascals, that's Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz, attacked the ABC after the match. So it does look like in the near future we're going to get the ABC and the Rascals again, which I'm definitely okay with. And then this impromptu match, which was not scheduled. Alicia Edwards versus Jody Threat, which, alright, interesting showcase. Jody Threat, obviously, Canadian, so she's gonna have pretty interesting time. Winner Jody Threat. Next up, your other title match of the evening, as the Digital Media Championship is on the line, as Tommy Dreamer takes on Diener. Now, no other design members come out, and Khan is just puff of smoke. I don't know where he ended up. Ultimately, your winner, Tommy Dreamer. So, this next match was supposed to be one-on-one. It was supposed to be the Trey Miguel versus Mike Bailey, but then it got changed to a tag team match as the Rascals take on Mike Bailey and a debuting Trent Seven, in which, always good to see my fellow mustache boy. Ultimately your winners, Trent Seven and Mike Bailey. Post-match, out comes Scott D'Amore, pretty much says, Bailey, you signed a contract on Josh Alexander's shoulders when you signed with Impact. Why don't you give the same courtesy to Trent Seven here? So it looks like Trent Seven's going to be in TNA, which, honestly, that's a really good signing. He's talented as heck, and definitely waiting to see what happens there. Next match, it was actually kind of in question as Jason Hawk in the pre-show attacked Jake Something from behind with a chair. Obviously, this match goes on, and your winner, Jake Something. So, interesting match for Hoek. Hopefully, they give Hoek a little more in the future. This next matchup, it's a bit of a hoss fight. You got Moose versus Rhino. Moose actually causes the DQ. Goes to leave. Rhino's like, Moose, I ain't taking the win like that. You get back in the ring now. We're going to do this in a street fight. So Moose starts walking off. It is then announced by Santino, who is not in the arena, which is interesting. Pretty much confirming that. And if Moose doesn't compete, he loses his title shot at Hard to Kill. So they get into it. And your winner, Moose. So he's going to be keeping his title shot. Next up, tag team action. As we got Trinity teaming up with Jordynne Grace, her opponent for Hard to Kill, to take on Giselle Shaw and the looking through free agency, Deonna Purrazzo. So, Deonna's contract has officially expired as of tonight, which is Saturday. So yeah, this is potentially her last show. And she eats the Juggernaut Driver for the win for Jordynne Grace and Trinity. Post-match, looks like Shaw and Purrazzo are getting into it a little bit. They stand tall with their arms raised. Shaw then attacks Purrazzo with the denouement, which is a great finisher name, to leave her laying in the ring. So now this is actually a pretty big announcement, as post Hard to Kill, we are going to see Okada at a TV taping, which is crazy to think about. He's going to be teaming with both the world champion, Alex Shelley, and the X Division champion, Chris Sabin, to take on the weird team of Eddie Edwards, Moose, and Brian Myers. Okay, interesting. Speaking of the Guns, they got a big test tonight as they take on Zack Sabre Jr. and Josh Alexander. A lot of gold up in this. And honestly, I was able to watch this matchup. And, yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. and Josh Alexander are two of the best wrestlers in the world. The Guns, obviously, with their tag team history, you know, being one of the best tag teams of all time in any company. Really good back and forth, but ultimately, Josh Alexander with the C4 spike to pick up the victory. So, looks like we're rebuilding Josh Alexander for another world title shot. Post this match, again announced for the TV tapings, we are going to be getting Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander Part 2. And Part 1 might be on my end of year list. So, yeah, that was Impact's last show under this brand. In January, they will be reverting back to TNA, which is very, very much awesome, and I can't wait. So, that was that show. We now move on to SmackDown, which is actually a special SmackDown because it's tribute to the troops. Now, what this means is that usually WWE holds this like holiday type thing to celebrate America's armed forces, and normally they're on military bases, in which you go back and see some of the footage from that. It is honestly interesting and also really, really cool. That is where one of them, I want to say it was like 2009-ish, maybe 2007-ish, Stone Cold stunned John Cena, which will always pop me. So we go right into the show, tribute to the troops. We got kicking off God Bless America by War and Treaty. I've never heard of these two, but they were honestly really, really good. You can't go wrong with God Bless America. Our first matchup is actually the first match in the U.S. title tournament, as we got Dragon Lee taking on Santos Escobar. Before the bell rings, Dominic Mysterio grabs a ringside seat as he and Dragon Lee have a match for the North American title later on in the weekend. And no, I'm not going to be covering NXT. I do apologize. This match was honestly really, really good, although it felt it felt a little cut off to me. Like, they were kind of stalling for time for this. I don't know. I still thought it was really good. And ultimately, after a Phantom Driver, your winner, Santos Escobar. Post-match, Dom Mysterio is in the ring, holding his title over a fallen Dragon Lee. Spoiler alert, Dragon Lee wins that match. So, we'll see how that goes with Dom and Judgment Day. So then we see Nick Aldis and Randy Orton backstage. Randy Orton's complaining, "Oh, why you got me teaming with a guy I have no idea if I can trust?" Nick Aldis replies, "Look, you guys obviously want the same thing. You want to take out the bloodline." And then Randy hands Nick Aldis, I guess, a thing of money. With Aldis looking through it and says, "Hey, this is $50,000. Well, the fine was only $100. What gives?" Randy's like, "That's for next time." Because the last time they stood in a ring together, Aldis ate an RKO. So, we'll see what happens there. That should be a funny one. Next up is a very interesting but weird Cody Rhodes promo. Pretty much, celebrating tribute to the troops. Then we can see some old footage, but it's just of John Cena, during the previous tribute to the troop events, interacting with soldiers. It's actually kind of touching. And then he introduces the U.S. drill team, in which they go through a whole routine. And then that's it. Nothing of real substance for the evening, but, it's Cody Rhodes. It's one of your biggest stars. You want to help celebrate. I get it. This next match is the, same bracket as Santos and Dragon Lee. Different part of the tournament. For the U.S. title, it's Bobby Lashley versus Karrion Kross, in which, talk about a fall from grace. Poor Kross, man. Anyway, this match was just very, very weird. Definitely not super bad. Like, at one point, Lashley went for the Hurt Lock. Kross powers out. Ultimately, after a spinebuster and a spear, your winner, Bobby Lashley. Yeah, alright. I do wish they'd do something more with Kross, because I think he's I wouldn't say exceptional talent, but he's pretty darn interesting. So then, post-match, Lashley goes up the ramp. Street Profits come out. They celebrate together. And that caused a little bit of trouble from the WWE on Fox team on X. And I'm not going to go through all that. That wasn't part of the show. Next up, we got Damage Control backstage. Bayley walks up. She says, "Look, I want to apologize for last week. So for this week, I'm going to volunteer to stay in the back." She hypes up Asuka's match with Charlotte Flair, in which we are going to get to. Calls it a WrestleMania rematch. And no one's ready for Asuka. Dakota Kai walks up to her, pretty much says, "Yeah, that's a good idea to stay behind. However, the rest of us are going to be there for her. For Asuka." Next up, we get an in-ring promo from CM Punk. And I'm going to preface it by saying, this is all I wanted from a CM Punk promo. Like, what he did on Monday, it was pretty much Crystal Pepsi Phil. This was more classic Pepsi Phil. So, anyway, we get into the promo. He pretty much starts off, good news, not going at the end of the show, not going to get cut off. Pretty much saying, I understand Pierce is trying to get me to Raw. Raw was a little bit louder on Monday. Maybe a little bit, but like, they were quiet right at the end, brother. Pretty much continues, I'm excited to take this journey with you guys, but ultimately, I'm going to leave it to you. Do I go to Monday Night Raw? Boo. Do I go to NXT, in which he was at Deadline over the weekend, which that's a little crazy. Do you want me to win the Royal Rumble? Hey. Do you want me to main event WrestleMania? Hey. As an old friend of mine would say, what do you guys want to talk about? Quoting Cody Rhodes, in which, wait a minute. Cody? Yeah, I guess it was pretty... Anyway, and then he continues, look, I'm not going to be Crystal Pepsi Phil anymore. I'm going to be Spicy Punk. I'm going to put my feet up on the couch, and my feet are all muddy. And he pretty much reiterates, it's not what you want me to talk about, it's who you want me to talk about. I'm going to talk about someone who's never here. Roman Reigns, I acknowledge you. I acknowledge your run, but that's coming to an end. And don't you forget who the OG Heyman guy is. Me. Roman's not here tonight, but your cousins are. I'm familiar with Jimmy. There's things I have to wrestle with. Should I fight Jimmy, mess with his cousins? But I'm going to need some backup. Would I get along with Randy Orton? Not with me, with LA Knight. Yeah. And then someone from the crowd mentions Kevin Owens. He then continues, Kevin Owens. That's an interesting call. But he's way too prickly, and we are way too much alike. And then he brings up, guys, it's 2023. We can't just be punching people in the face backstage. We need to have some class. Thus, poking fun at AEW, the whole AEW situation, in which, it's fine. Then he continues, a lot of people are excited to have me back. Hell, even JBL is excited for me to be back. Except for one guy. One bad apple. And now I don't have stock in anything. And he's not the man in his own home, which shots fired for Seth. I'm so glad to be back. I'm going to find out where I'm going to sign on Monday. And it's going to be in the same town I walked out on 10 years ago, which that's actually kind of insane. Alright, hush. Trying to do something here. He continues, I'm the monkey wrench in everyone's plans. I'm back to finish what I started. finishing my story means main eventing WrestleMania. In which, yeah, good for you, Punk. I hope that doesn't mean Cody's losing his spot. Although, I will say, having Cody versus Roman back-to-back, maybe not the best thing in the world. Maybe you'd save Cody versus Roman 2 for another time. Maybe for SummerSlam or so. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Then we get Punk walking backstage. He stops outside the Bloodline locker room. Keeps going. Kevin Owens then walks to him. They kind of have a little stare down. Punk asks, you know where Aldis' locker room is? Owens pretty much says, nope. And Punk says, thanks. And they walk their separate ways. Which, very interesting. This is all I wanted up from a Punk promo. Just some fire, some passion, set up some rivalries, and let's get going. Now, it's more than obvious he's not going to be wrestling week to week like he did in AEW, but at least we got something set up. So, anyway, we go to our next matchup, as it's Charlotte Flair taking on Asuka. Damage Control, Mylan Bailey is out with them. Attacking from behind is Mia Yim and Zelina Vega. They kind of brawl with Damage Control. Coming out from the stage side is Bianca Belair and Shotzi. And a bunch of them brawl to the back. Ding, ding, ding. That starts the match. And it was an alright matchup. Definitely not as good as some of their previous matches. At one point, Charlotte Flair goes for a moonsault and clearly landed weird. Because there's footage out there of her, kind of holding her ankle. They continue. Bailey then waddles out because, of course. Bailey then gets up on the apron, looks to distract Charlotte. Big old elbow strike to Charlotte. Roll up by Asuka to pick up the victory. So, it looks like Charlotte Flair is going to be out hurt for a little bit. We'll see what happens. Hopefully she's okay. Next up, we go backstage. Nick Aldis is giving CM Punk a contract, pretty much telling him, think this over. He then leaves. In comes Cody Rhodes. And they have a little stare down. Cody pretty much then says, I heard what you said out there. It's definitely interesting. Glad to have you back. And they extend hands and they shake. So, might be a little bit of a shot at the situation in AEW, which, considering Cody was an EVP. So, Then we see Randy Orton and LA Knight. They're warming up backstage. Punk walks in, pretty much says, good luck tonight, boys. Walks off. Randy Orton turns to LA Knight, says, ready? LA Knight says, yeah. And they're out for the main event, as it's Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa taking on Randy Orton and LA Knight. This was not a good main event. Like, it wasn't bad, but it was... It flowed really, really weird. Like, obviously, you got the, can they coexist corner with Orton and Knight, tagging each other in with the back a little aggressively. Solo and Jimmy kind of taking it to their opponents for a little bit. LA Knight looked to go for a BFT near the end of the match. Orton stops him, turns around Jimmy RKO for the victory for his team. Like I said, not a great matchup to finish up SmackDown. Hopefully we get a little bit more coming in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, ultimately SmackDown was a little bit weird. Like, I get it. It was more of a celebration episode with tribute to the troops. But the wrestling was not great. The only really, really good thing I can say about this episode was the Punk promo. That was pretty much it. So, yeah, that was SmackDown. We now roll right into AEW Rampage, baby. And we start off with the international title on the line as Orange Cassidy takes on Angelico. And honestly, this was a very, very well-paced bout. Started out a little slow with Angelico trying to tie Orange Cassidy in knots. Then he kept going to Cassidy's injured knee, which, honestly, great storytelling. Ultimately, Cassidy hits the beach break. Angelico rolls to the outside. And then Danhausen, who's at ringside, because apparently he and Cassidy are friends, ends up cursing him. In which, don't ask me what that is. It's a little weird. Cassidy ultimately with the orange punch to pick up the victory and retain his title. This was definitely a really good match, although it did feel a teeny bit rushed. Like maybe a little bit, but ultimately it was what it was. Next up, we got Abaddon versus Trish Adora. Trish Adora trying to keep Abaddon down for most of the match, but she keeps resurrecting because she's essentially a zombie. Trish goes for the Lariat Dublin, which is one of my favorite finisher names. Misses. Abaddon hits the Black Dahlia to pick up the victory. Lights go out. Lights come back on. Julia Hart's in the ring. Julia lays down the TBS title in front of Abaddon. Abaddon picks it up. Looks like she's kind of celebrating a little bit. They have a little face-off. Lights out again. Lights on. Julia Hart has gone along with the TBS title. And Abaddon is throwing a little bit of a fit. Match itself wasn't great. Like, I don't know if Abaddon's just limited. But I thought these two could work a better match. Speaking of potentially working a better match, we got Christopher Daniels and Matt Sydal taking on Konosuke Takeshita and Powerhouse Hobbs of the Don Callis family. Don Callis family started out dominating. Daniels and Sydal got some stuff in. And then Hobbs just overpowered everybody. Spinebuster, world's most dangerous slam, which is the world's most strongest slam. And your winners, the Don Callis family. We then get a backstage interview from Top Flight and Action Andretti. Pretty much saying, look, we didn't take Penta's disrespect last week in interrupting our interview. However, we are accepting Pentagon Jr.'s challenge. It's time to step up and take flight. In which, that's a really, really good catchphrase. Cannot wait to see that match. That match is going to be crazy. And we go to our Rampage main event, which is a Continental Classic first round matchup, as we got Daniel Garcia taking on the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. And this match was absolutely brutal. One point, Daniel Garcia takes, the eye covering Danielson has been using to cover his injured eye off, starts targeting the eye. Eye starts bleeding like looks like something out of a horror movie. Garcia eventually gets the Dragon Tamer in, but Danielson gets out of it. Garcia with a nasty pile driver, but only getting a 2 count. Danielson eventually gets the label lock on Daniel Garcia, who doesn't tap out, but he passes out. So, your winner, Bryan Danielson. Honestly, this was a great match. Not much to say about it. Like, was there earlier encounters better? For me, absolutely. Was this a bad match? Absolutely not. Bryan Danielson could probably wrestle a broomstick and still get a great match out of somebody. So, that is Rampage, baby. We now finish up with AEW Collision. And we start off with a bit of a grudge match, including the Continental Classic, as Eddie Kingston takes on Claudio Castagnoli. These two guys have some real beef with one another, and it shows. Like, they do not like each other. Like, right out, Claudio with a big boot to Kingston. They're hitting each other with everything they can. Claudio with a big swing. Eddie Kingston with a few hurricanes. Uppercuts galore. Claudio goes for a Ricola bomb. Eddie Kingston gets out of it. Couple hurricanes in a pile driver. That gets only a 2 count. Claudio blocks another pile driver attempt. But then Kingston with the roll up for the Continental Classic victory. And he gets his first point. Which, honestly, I want to see these two guys wrestle every week. I don't think they can have a bad match together. We then go to a Jon Moxley promo. Pretty much says, look, was I scared of Rush this week? Yes. But ultimately, he's all bark, no bite. Was it a hard match? Yes. But this tournament is supposed to be hard. And right now, Swerve, you've got a lot of buzz on you. But staying on top is hard. And it's a price you're not willing to pay. Whatever will be, will be. Either way, it's going to be a long night, so pack a lunch. Moxley always has a great promo. I don't care what you say about the dude. Then we get an interview by Hook, immediately interrupted by Wheeler Yuta, who calls Hook a paper champion. I'm a real pure champion, and I can beat you in any match type. Hook replies, you won by kicking Shibata in the balls. Yuta then retorts, I'm tired of dealing with you, Hook. I'm ready to put you out. And next time we face each other, it's going to be under FTW rules. Not 100% sure what that means, but I think it's like no DQ, considering the FTW is an ECW original title. So, yeah, I guess we'll see. Next up, we got Willow Nightingale taking on Mercedes Martinez. These two have faced off a lot, including at Final Battle the previous year for Mercedes Ring of Honor Women's title. They had a match on Collision on the 6th of January this past year. And they've all been really, really good. And this one, I'd say just as good. They really went after each other. Ultimately, after a razor's edge try, Willow with the roll-up for the victory. Post-match, Mercedes Martinez and Diamante attack Willow. Diamante then gets the shortest ladder I have ever seen, and they attack Willow with it. Then out comes Chris Statlander to ultimately make the save with a lead pipe, I guess. I don't even know what that weapon was. Next up, we got a 2.0 interview. Standing behind them is Jake Hager. Before the interview can start, Jake Hager interrupts. Can we talk about Danhausen? I got all kinds of officials on him. He's got my hat. And I got hat fever again. He walks off. Then 2.0 continue. We're in Montreal tonight. We're thinking of all the greats that have come before us. And now we want to add us to that list. They continue. How many times have we sat in those seats out there tonight wishing we'd be in there, in the ring, competing? Well, tonight we get to live our dreams, and we're going to take it. Then in comes Ruby Soho. She starts talking with Angelo Parker. Menard's like, no, we got to stop this. We got to focus. They leave. Then Saraya and someone else. It's not Toni Storm. I think it's Mariah May. Maybe. And she's talking to Soho, pretty much saying, look, Ruby, I don't know what you're doing here, hobnobbing with this one guy, but you gotta stop it, and we gotta focus on getting me the women's title back. Later on, we're gonna have a talk. Then we get a Swerve Strickland promo. Pretty much says, I'm the leader in this whole tournament. I'm not gonna stop being the leader there. I'm going to try to be the leader of this entire industry. And when I run this back as leader and top in AEW, Mox, you call yourself the ace of AEW. While you do a lot of violent stuff, I do violent stuff too. May the best man win. You then go into this very odd matchup as Wardlow takes on Willie Mack. Wardlow starts off low dominant. Willie Mack tries to get back into it. Goes for a Hurricane Rana, gets caught. Powerbomb Symphony. Big old clothesline. One last powerbomb. Your winner by ref stoppage, Wardlow, who, even before the call, walked out of the ring, which I don't know. I wish this matchup went a little bit longer, but I do understand wanting to rebuild Wardlow's image. Next up, a bit of an unexpected matchup as Kenny Omega takes on All Ego Ethan Page, and honestly, I think this should have been the main event. No offense to the main event. Main event was great. This was so good. They gave Ethan Page plenty of time, plenty of moves. He counters a one-winged angel, which is crazy to think about. Goes for the Ego's Edge, that gets countered. Couple V triggers into the one-winged angel for the win for Kenny Omega. And as Kenny Omega is celebrating up the ramp, out comes Big Bill, who attacks Kenny Omega on the ramp. And then you see Ethan Page rolling out of the ring, checking on Omega. So does that mean we're going to see Ethan Page team with Kenny Omega to take on the tag champs, considering he and Jericho have a title shot? I guess we'll see. Then we get an interview with CJ Perry, who's hyping up Andrade, saying, take a look at this man's resume. He's made for this. He's won gold all over, and he has all the tools to beat Bryan tonight. Then Miro walks in, pretty much says, "When was the last time you said something as glowing up like that about me? And when I hunt, you clean. When I bring home fish, you gut them. I'm not going to touch your client during this tournament, Andrade. But once that's all done, so is he." So setting up a Miro versus Andrade feud? That could be interesting. We then go to this very, very interesting tag team match as Penta El Zero Miedo teams up with Commander to take on 2.0. I forget their AEW names. This was definitely a very weird match, but an interesting match. Like, the Clash of Styles worked, but I do wish they were given a bit more time, as it did feel like maybe the Luchadors kind of went too quick, as Penta hits a Fear Factor, Commander with a shooting star press from the ropes to pick up the victory. I wish they were given a teeny little bit more time, because 2.0 looked really good in this matchup. And, yeah, we'll see. And finally, we got our main event of the evening, as Bryan Danielson takes on Andrade El Idolo in the Continental Classic. And this match, obviously starting off a little slow, starting off a little technical. Ultimately, it gets into a brawl, including Andrade reopening the injury from Rampage. And then Andrade with a knee strike in the corner and his one-arm DDT to pick up the victory. Definitely an interesting shout to have Andrade win here. But, yeah, I'm in. I'm definitely in for it. Post-match, doctors are checking on Bryan. They're trying to get him out of the ring. Out comes the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio and Yuta. No Mox, though. That's interesting. They're out to check on Bryan. Claudio pushes Andrade out of the way. They get into a little shoving match. They stare each other down for a minute. And then Andrade leaves. So, definitely an interesting finish. Gonna be interesting to see how they deal with Daniel's injury. But ultimately, pretty darn good show for Collision. Couple matches I would have liked to see a little bit more out of. But ultimately, was a fun show. And, yeah, that does it for the rest of the week in pro wrestling. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please stay tuned, because we got more of this coming up this week. And then I think I'm going to try to do either on the 16th, like the week before Christmas, I'm going to try to do ultimately my end of year awards. So, that's definitely something to look forward to. And until next time, happy wrestling, everybody. Peace.